Okay, everyone. So this lesson is looking at the different components of soil. What are the different types of soil that exist, and also what are some impacts that humans can have on soil? So, soil is essentially the first 6 meters deep worth of the earth. Okay, and essentially all the nutrients that are found in soil is what's needed for all levels of life. Because, of course, we know that producers use the nutrients in the soil in order to build their cells and to grow, and then, of course, continue through the food chain, right? With the producers being trophic level number 1. So the different components of soils, there's 4 main layers. And each layer has different textures, different colors, and different nutrient levels. So the first layer is the litter. Okay, so the litter is what you see on the top layer when you look down at the ground. So usually this is including the grass, flowers, anything that is on the very, very top portion of soil. This is also where you're going to find some decomposed organic matter. So, for example, you'll find earthworms on top of the litter, and just directly under the surface of the grass is what we're looking at here. So let's say some grass has died, right? So you might have some decomposing grass in that area, just to give an example. So underneath the litter, we have what's called topsoil. So if you've ever gone to Home Depot or Canadian Tire or helped your mom or dad plant a garden, you'll know that you can actually go and buy topsoil, and topsoil is the richest layer of soil. So this is under the litter, and this is where you have small particles of rock and humus. Okay, so this is not the chickpea dip that's good to have with like pretzels and cucumber and pita. This is the term humus is decomposed plant and animal matter, and it gives the soil that's in topsoil its rich dark color. So the darker the topsoil, usually the more rich in nutrients that soil happens to be. So this is why when you do want to plant a garden, you want to make sure you have nice rich topsoil when you are especially first planting your garden. Okay, so the next layer underneath the topsoil is called subsoil. So this is the layer underneath the topsoil. So we're kind of going down. So litter, then topsoil is underneath that. Subsoil is underneath that. So this is now where you begin to have more and more rocks in the component of the soil. So there's less organic matter, there's less nutrients, and the color actually becomes a lighter color. Okay, it's more rocky. Then, of course, if you eventually hit a point where you have a solid rock layer, this is called bedrock. So this is underneath the subsoil. So there is no nutrients pretty much whatsoever. We call it its component of soil, but really it's just literally a rock. So this is just a picture to kind of show you. So the litter is the top. Then you have subsoil, which is this rich area here. Then you have subsoil, so it's becoming lighter in color and it's more rocky, less and less nutrients. And then, of course, if you dig down deep enough, you have basically a solid layer of rock. Okay, so let's look at the different types of soil that exist. There's 3 general types. So we have loam, we have clay, and then we have sand. So we're going to talk about basically the differences between them and what works well for planting producers in and what doesn't. All right, so the first type of soil is called loam. So this is where you have actually a good balance between air pockets, like soil looseness and tightness in terms of like how compact the soil is. So loam has some rock particles, but there's many different sizes in this type of soil. So meaning you have air pockets, you can kind of see here in the zoomed in picture. You have soil particles, you have roots and water. So the air space between the particles is actually great because when it rains or when you water your plant, the water goes into those little air pockets. It also gives room for the roots to grow. If your soil is too compact, the roots won't be able to spread and grow as they normally would. So you want to have a balance between space between particles to allow for water and room to grow, but you don't want it too compact because in that case, you're not going to have any room. On the flip side, if there's too much airspace, the water won't stay inside of those pockets. It'll actually just run and drain right through. So loam is actually a great soil to be growing plants in. And typically it also has lots of that humus that we talked about before, which is the rich nutrient soil. Okay, clay is a very, very compact type of soil. So this is where there is barely any air pockets. So this is actually not beneficial to plant growth whatsoever because the roots are not able to go through and the water actually cannot travel through it as easily as it would with the loam. So what happens is you have a lot of water that will sit on top of this type of soil and it won't actually drain through and stay in the earth where the plants will actually need it. And then lastly, we have sandy soil. So sandy soil is not great either for plant growth. This is where you have, think of sand on the beach, right? So sand is very loose. There's lots of space pockets. So the root growth is great. There's lots of room for the roots to grow. But the problem here is that the water drains through very fast and very easily. So the nutrients and the water doesn't stay put. It kind of just gets washed away. So it doesn't really create optimal growth here. Okay, so the human impacts that how we can affect soil. It's important to note that soil is a limited resource. So, for example, unless the nutrients are returned back into the soil, the nutrients really are part of a cycle, right? So we looked at the nitrogen cycle, for example. So all the nutrients found in soil are limited on Earth. So it can take a very long time for the nutrients to return to the soil or a very quick time. It really depends on, well, many different factors. So where the soil is, what the temperature is, the types of plants that are around. So it's important to note that it can be easily impacted. Okay, so we're going to look at 3 different ways that humans have affected soil. So first one is soil erosion. So what happens, the term erosion really means loss due to wind or water. So think of it as when something is washed away. So when you have soil that is, especially in an area where there has been deforestation, so it's exposed, or overgrazing due to livestock, so meaning the soil has been basically depleted of the producers that were originally there. And now the topsoil is exposed. So what happens is when there's a lot of wind, or if it rains, or some sort of precipitation, the nutrients that are inside of that soil can essentially get washed away, or the soil itself actually. So what you can after be left with, if this happens over many, many years, is you can essentially have rock. So instead of having the natural soil we used to have, you'll have essentially a rock layer. Now, one positive thing that the agricultural industry does for soil is crop rotation. So over time, if you plant the same types of plants in soil over and over again, what happens is you have the same nutrients entering the soil. Okay, so it becomes very the biodiversity of the soil is actually decreased. So what happens is here, instead of adding chemical fertilizers, what some agricultural farms will do is they will switch up the order in which they plant. So let's say one field, they grow tomatoes one year, next year they'll do corn, and the year after they'll do potatoes. So that way when the stems and the leaves of the plants decompose, it rotates the amount of and the difference nutrients from year to year. So it's actually a great one positive impact that humans can do for soil. Okay, another positive impact is soil conservation. So again, this is an agricultural impact. So farmers can protect soil through something called no-till farming or organic farming. So no-till farming is actually where you leave behind the roots and the debris from the last year's crop. And actually, you can do this yourself at home. So for example, instead of when you cut the grass, let's say in the springtime, instead of collecting all of the grass clippings, you can leave the grass clippings on your lawn or the leaves on your lawn. So what happens is the leaves and grass over time will decompose in your lawn, and then what happens is you have a richer soil that's left behind. So farmers will do that as well. Organic farming is another aspect that will actually increase the soil, where you have no chemical fertilizers that are added. Everything is more natural. So let's say they may want to put animal manure instead of a fertilizer that's been synthetically made, and no pesticides are also added. So we're going to be looking at pesticides in a little bit later. So just some kind of different things that you may or may not have thought of when we look at how soil is affected by humans.